the listeners at home, to all the conduits of this broadcast, the various television stations. We appreciate that you are able to bring this message to all our people. We are today giving a report by the Economic Cluster of Government on the measures that were announced by the President of the Republic of South Africa, His Excellency Cyril Matamela Ramaphosa. Without any further ado, we will call upon the Minister of Tourism, who is also the chair of our government economic cluster, to read a statement of the cluster on the implementation of the measures that were announced by the President in the economic relief side. Thank you very much. Minister Kubai Nkubane. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister Mthembu. Good afternoon to the listeners, to the viewers, to my fellow colleagues and co-chairperson of the Economic Cluster who has joined us as well, Minister Mandashe, with other ministers who are here. We have a statement on behalf of the Economic Cluster of Cabinet. The President announced the national lockdown on the 23rd of March, a difficult decision in whose absence the health, social, economic consequences would have been far worse today. The declaration enabled our nation to have an integrated and coordinated response to deal with the spread of coronavirus and set into motion our disaster management mechanism, focusing on preventing and reducing the outbreak of the virus. Government has accordingly decided that beyond Thursday, 30th April, we should begin a gradual and phased recovery of economic activity, which will be implemented through a deliberate and cautious approach to the easing of current lockdown restrictions associated with current level 5 classification as explained by the President on 23rd April 2020. In undertaking the risk-adjusted approach, we have sequenced and phased in key sectors and priority areas with a view to deepening the fight against COVID-19 whilst rebuilding the economy. The phased-in approach will affect key economic sectors and drivers, as well as promote human development and well-being. It had been expected that, in some cases, a sector would not be able to return to full production during level 4, or even at lower levels while the risk of infections remain. If government does not coordinate the response, if government does not coordinate the response, there is a risk of more job losses and the contracting of the economy to unprecedented levels. And it is in that context that the current funding or disaster response through reallocation, reprioritization, and emergency funds must also be seen. This plan spans over 6 to 8 months because we believe that the curve peak will probably arrive in September 2020. Following the President's address on the 21st April 2020, the National Treasury has issued a second set of measures aimed at assisting individuals and businesses through the economic hardship brought by the pandemic. These measures consist of fiscal and support instruments to help our economy overcome the severe impact on production, markets, trade, and employment. The intervention includes skills development levy holiday, fast-tracking of value-added tax refunds, 3-month deferral for filing and first payment of carbon tax liabilities, deferral of payment of excise taxes on alcoholic beverages and tobacco products, an increase in the expanded employment tax incentive amount, an increase in the proportion of tax to be deferred and in the gross income threshold for automatic tax deferrals, increasing the deduction available for donation to the Solidarity Fund, adjusting pay as you earn for donation made through the employer, expanding access to living annuity funds, further support for firms will come from a 200 billion loan scheme for small and medium-sized businesses. The National Treasury is finalizing the details and should be ready by the end of this week, as indicated by the Minister of Finance last week, but they will announce by end of this week. On the mining sector, the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy has issued a directive to all mining operations to ensure safe start-up procedures as the sector prepares to ramp up to 50% of capacity. The directive is issued to ensure compliance with Section 5, subsection 1 of the Mine Health and Safety Act, Act number 29 of 1996, as amended, which requires that every employer must, as far as reasonably practicably, provide and maintain a safe working environment. These measures, in line with the latest disaster management regulation, should include rigorous screening of all employees, including contractors, prior to accessing the mine, testing of employees with symptoms of COVID-19, adequate social distancing, provision of quarantine facilities for employees showing signs of COVID-19, establishment and maintenance of personal hygiene program, and provision of appropriate personal protective equipment, including face masks. The direction also encourages employers to systematically phase in workers at the various mines. Startup procedures must be developed in consultation with organized labor, which will be submitted to the department prior to ramping up operations. On the tourism sector, there is no part of the tourism industry globally that is not impacted negatively because of COVID-19. Travel bans, airline groundings, heightened restrictions to movement not only across borders but also within our country has meant that tourism-related activities are non-existent. As previously reported, and as part of government's intervention to mitigate the effects of COVID-19, the Department of Tourism opened an application portal for the COVID-19 Tourism Relief Fund to the value of 200 million. However, it is a matter of public knowledge that the department was served with court papers by both AfriForum and Solidarity in an attempt to set aside the scheme on grounds of its transformational characteristics as it upholds the broad-based Black Economic Empowerment Act. In respect of the court, while business was still able to apply, the department has kept the processing of the application on hold. The department will be guided by the outcome of the court, but stands ready to support the businesses in distress. Thus far, over 10,000 applications were received, and the court proceedings took place this morning, and we're waiting the outcome from the court. We've commenced work with global, continental, and national stakeholders to develop a post-COVID tourism recovery strategy. Suffice at this stage to say that the industry will be focusing on 3 phases: survival, recovery, and then prosperity. On labor and employment matters, government calls on all employers to apply for the COVID-19 benefits through the temporary employer-employee relief scheme on behalf of their employees. To date, the UIF has received just over 103,000 applications from employers, representing about 1.75 million employees. In total, the UIF has over 1.8 million employers registered on its database, representing more than 8 million workers. As of today, the cumulative amount paid since April 27 is 3.3 billion, just over 3.3 billion. Of the received applications, the UIF has processed 59,000 employers' applications, which means that more than 862,000 employees will receive their benefits. About 10,000 applications could not be processed due to errors, and the affected companies have been notified to correct their applications and resubmit. Some of the errors identified relate to incorrect banking details, making it impossible for payments to be processed. The UIF is working around the clock to meet the extraordinary volumes of requests for assistance presented by the COVID-19 pandemic. The UIF call center, which initially had 75 agents, has increased its capacity now, has 400 agents operating the toll-free number 0800 030 007. More call center agents will be added should the need arises. Furthermore, in terms of the department's work on guidelines to assist South African business, the guidelines will help employers identify risk level in the workplace and to determine what appropriate control measures to implement. It focuses on the engineering controls, administrative controls, safe work practice, and personal protective equipment. It includes installing high-efficiency air filters and increasing ventilation rates in work environment, encouraging sick workers to stay at home, minimizing contact amongst workers, clients, and customers by replacing face-to-face meetings with virtual communication, minimizing the number of workers on site at any given time through rotation or shift work, and discontinue non-essential travel, developing emergency communication plans, including a task team for answering workers' concerns and internet-based communication, provide personal hygiene resources such as no-charge refuse bins, hand soaps, alcohol-based hand rubs, disinfectants, and disposable towels, and also provide gloves, goggles, face shields, face masks, gowns, aprons, coats, overalls, hair and shoe covers, and respiratory protection where appropriate. In the period since the issuing of these guidelines, a clear picture has emerged about COVID-19 and the nature of hazards and precautions in the workplaces that should be taken to minimize the risks. To this end, the department, working with social partners at NEDLAC, has developed occupational health and safety directions, the purpose of which is to stipulate measures that must be taken by employers in order to protect the health and safety of workers and the members of the public who enter the workplaces or are likely to be exposed to the activities. Under small business development, since COVID-19 relief measures were announced, 530 million rand was set aside to support SMMEs, and the Department of Small Business Development announced the SMME relief scheme to support payroll, rental, and utilities over 3 months. To date, the scheme has approved over 235 million rands, protecting over 11,000 jobs. The Spaza Shop Support Scheme, which was launched about a week ago, has already received over 104 applications, with 88 of them already approved. Having received inputs on the risk-adjusted approach, government will consider them finalizing the directions for various sectors, and this will be followed up by media briefing once the regulations have been approved and publicized, and the ministers will, per sector, within the economic sector, explain what is to be done and the directives thereof. Thank you very much, Chairperson. I hand over to you, Minister Mthembu.
That was Minister Mamoloko Kubane speaking and summarizing what the economic cluster has done in implementing the economic relief measures that the President spoke to. Sibonga kakhulu, siyabonga sisi. Sibonge nasemakhaya. Sesawuthatha ke imibuzo ke ukuthi sithole ukuthi zithini intatheli ile kuphi la kufanele siqaqise khona. We will now take questions so that we get from those that were listening, particularly our journalists, what areas of clarity they would like to be given by ministers who are here. Now, do we have online? None. We have, I know, there are always questions on WhatsApp.
Yes, Minister, and we've counted them today.
We have counted them?
Yes.
And you can count?
Yes.
Okay.
We have 7 so far.
Okay. Can we take them?
Yes, thank you, Minister. The first question, well, it's 3 questions from Charlotte at EWN. The first one is directed to Minister Mthembu in his capacity as Acting Minister of Communications. And the question is cell phone tracking already being used? If so, on how many occasions? And how many contacts has this technology helped trace? The second question is to the Minister of Tourism. Given the contribution of tourism to the GDP, are there plans to expand the targeted relief package for that sector? Please indicate on whether and how much has been disbursed so far. Then there's a question to the Minister of Labour. There have been several complaints around the UIF process. For an example, some companies have applied for UIF on behalf of their employees. They've been paid out in a lump sum, but with no indication of how to apportion that sum. Are you aware of these issues, and what are you doing to address them? Then there is a question from Vickers Berger from Netwerk 24 to the Minister of Labour. Can you please clarify, will domestic workers be allowed to return to work on level 4, and under what regulations and circumstances will that be? Then there is a question from Tebogo Monyo from Radio Riverside Community Radio Station, also to the Minister of Labour. Will employees and employers that apply through the UIF TRES receive 100% of their salaries if successful? And will it be a once-off assistance or a monthly assistance until the lockdown is lifted? And if it is ongoing, must an application be done on a monthly basis? Can I continue?
So, let's hold it there. I know that there is now a person who wants to ask a question from our online services.
That's correct, Minister. We've got Mshengu from Sunday Times. Mshengu, go for it.
Mshengu, we're listening.
All right, but I've got 2 questions. One to the Minister of
Mshengu, can you, if you can put your radio off or your television off so that we can hear you properly. Because we can't hear you properly, there is interference from your side. Please, but we are ready to hear you.
Okay, then. How do I...
Hello?
Yes, Mr. I'm asking what do I sound okay now because my TV is off.
I didn't even get that one.
Okay. Let me proceed to the questions, Mr. Mthembu. First of all, a question to the Minister of Small Business around the shelves. I think Minister of Dubai mentioned 104 applications and 84 applications.
You know what we will propose, Mshengu, because there is serious interference on your side. Let's come back to you and check again, because it has happened, this has happened before from your side, and you were able to deal with it, whatever it is that is interfering with our system. Let's answer the questions that have been asked for now. We will come back to you whilst you are checking around what could be interfering with our communication system. Maybe let's just start with the first question that was asked on the cell phone tracking. By the way, the minister that can answer, because that of all those that have come into contact with people who are infected is indeed the Minister of Health. We have so far not shared notes on how, to what extent have we used this system to assist in the tracing and tracking. The sooner we have shared notes with the Minister of Health, and he has given us the details thereof, we'll be able to come back and respond to this question. Colleagues? Minister Ngesi.
Is that fine? Oh, yes, sir. Yeah. Just two questions. I didn't catch the other question, but I think it's going to be repeated. There are several complaints from some employers where companies have been paid out some lump sums. They do not know how to allocate that. I must just indicate that we don't just pay money to a company. Those monies we are paying. Oh. Is it on now?
Yeah, now.
Thank you. The issue about the lump sum, which employers cannot be able to allocate to the employees, they must just be honest. We don't just pay. We pay based on the payroll which has been submitted by the employer with all the figures. And we're not paying the whole amount. We're paying, and it's in the legislation, 38%, because it is a relief. And we had budgeted for a period of 3 months, and then we'll see what will happen after 3 months in relation to COVID. But I must also say that there remain challenges, and the challenges particularly where employers are also not assisting their employees to claim. We have calculated that some 220,000 workers entitled to claim have not yet done so. And we are endeavoring now to contact those individuals. The reason for these numbers is because some employers have not even dared to help the employees. And we continue to appeal to them to help us. I think I've already answered the one which says, will they receive 100%? No, it's 38%. And in terms of the tails for the company, if the company is going down and they are busy with some restructuring, that will be determined by the CCMA, because they have to make submissions there and particular processes and satisfy certain criteria which have been put there. But in relation to COVID, we think that we are on board, we are moving with the train, except that the employers must also play their role.
Thank you very much. Minister Mamaloko.
Am I audible?
We can hear you.
Okay, thank you. There was one question directed to me specifically relating to the Tourism Relief Fund. We've not distributed anything due to the court case. As soon as we do have a court outcome, we will start, based on that outcome, then work on that. So we committed that the minute we were interdicted, we were served with papers that we would not distribute. But what we allowed was for applications to come through, as a process, and we sought legal advice on that. If we can continue to receive the applications, we did, and we agreed that we'll not disperse the funds. Once we have the outcome, we were promised today by court that the outcome should be, the judge said she should be able to give us the outcome before Friday or by Friday latest. So once that is known, and then we'll be able to. So it answers both how much we've been able to distribute and where, so we've not distributed anything. In terms of going forward, we are not able to engage with Treasury in terms of reprioritization or even allocation of new relief fund, because Treasury, what they look for is your capacity to spend. So because we've not spent what is currently allocated as the 200 million, we are not even able to engage with Treasury for further relief funds. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. Minister Mantashe, any question for you? None. Okay. Minister, Small Business, Minister Kumbutso. Oh, the question, we still need to get to the question. Can we go back to, is it Sbu? Mshengu. Can we go back to Mshengu and get his question? Mshengu, please. Mshengu, are you there? Are you there?
Yes, I'm here, Minister.
You seem to be better now.
All right, let me go ahead then.
Thank you.
My question is, Minister of Small Business, Minister Chaveni. In the initial briefing, there was a mention of sponsor shops, 104 applications, I think, if I heard correctly, and 84 approved. Can we get the details of the monetary value of those that have been approved? Also, this number seems to be too low, given the many sponsor shops in this particular country. How many sponsor shops, in terms of those that are registered, are there in the database of the department?
We have heard you very well. Next time, Mshengu, do us a favor. Just look around what will interfere with our communication with you and shut that off so that we can hear you as clearly as we have done now. Minister. Minister Chaveni.
Thank you. The sponsor shops that have been approved, 104, 88 out of the 104. The monetary value is that each sponsor shop gets a working capital investment of 3.5, which they use. And also they get another 3.5 thousand rands for revolving credit, which they'll use at the pre-selected wholesalers. What is also important is that if the sponsor shop chooses to get the full amount of 7,000 as revolving credit, they can do that. Why the number is too low, we've just opened, but given the restriction of movement, we are using we have partnered with Nedbank, so the accessing of Nedbank branches, because they are not working normal working hours, it has proven a challenge, though they are using also the Boxer stores. But we're working with Nedbank to improve that coverage. We are also engaging with the post office to make sure that we can then use the postal offices for the registration of more sponsor shops. The database does not reside within the Department of Small Business Development, as the licensing or permitting of sponsor shop is the responsibility of municipalities. We are working with municipalities. They've got a database of over 130,000 approved sponsor shops to trade within the country. So we are working with municipalities to make sure that the sponsor shops can access the scheme. The LED offices of municipalities will kick in within this week or next week to directly call the sponsor shops within their database to apply the for the scheme, and also to support them to complete the application forms. And this is in line with our partnership with SALGA, and we must say we are grateful, and we must extend our appreciation to Nedbank and in terms of the partnership, but also that they've availed the Boxer, their funding desk at Boxer stores across the country to enable our reach. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Chaveni. I know that there is somebody or there's nobody. We go back to our WhatsApp group. Looks like our WhatsApp group is working like a charm. Okay, no. are they asking the last question to the right minister? But let's leave it for now. I think they've asked it to a wrong minister, but I think there is a right minister who will answer that. Oh, it's joint. Okay. Who wants to start? Mr. Mamuloko.
Okay. Just to indicate, colleagues, that final details in terms of level 4 will be announced after the NCC has processed and a special media briefing will be done. So those details of who, because remember there was a process where Minister Patel and Minister Lamini Zuma announced and released the document for public consultation. Work is being done. All of us are working around the clock. Once that work is done, and then it will be announced. So with those, you know who operated what level, whether it's doctors, which level of doctors are operating there. So those details will be announced once the work is done. Whether what was announced last week still remains, or whether it changes. So we can't say in this media briefing because we're waiting for that final process with the increase. With regards to the hotels, no hotel is supposed to be received. Sorry?
You can't hear?
Are you getting in my file? Okay.
But did you hear what she was saying before?
You couldn't?
Okay.
I was explaining that the details of level 4 can hear. Is it fine? Okay. I was explaining that the details of what activities, which sectors are going to operate at level 4 will be announced once the process has been finalized. Minister Lamini Zuma, together with Minister Patel, released the document during the media briefing and called for increase. Work is being done in the background to ensure that work is being processed. Once it's finalized through NCC, National Command Council, communication will be done to say these are the final activities that will happen under level 4. So that's the first thing. Coming to hotels, the second question. Okay. Coming to hotels, the second question that has been asked is to indicate that no hotels are supposed to be receiving any new clients or patrons unless it's for purposes of quarantine or support for essential services. We've been currently ensuring. Is it fine? We've been currently supporting the sector in terms of ensuring that those who are supporting.
Minister, why don't we just use this platform?
Okay.
I think let's use this platform to take us back online then. Because I don't know why they can't hear from there, but are we coming back on air? Tell us when we're back on air. Are we back on air? Okay. You'll indicate where.
Oh, we got cut off. Waiting for a signal. Okay. I'll start again. Okay. Yeah, just to start again, indicating the questions about what activities will take place under level 4. Would want to reiterate that the process has not been concluded. Once the process has been concluded, a communication will be done. You'd note that last week when Minister Dlamini Zuma and Minister Patel issued the level 4 guidelines to say these are proposed activities, a process of public consultation was opened. Currently, the work is being done in the background. Once the NCC finalizes which activities will happen, including whether there are doctors that are going to operate, because the question was related to whether we'll have doctors other than those in the emergencies operating. Those will be processed and communication will be done. Coming to the issue of hotels, I want to indicate that no hotel is supposed to be operational during now, because the only activities that happens with hotels now, or any facility such as accommodation, B&Bs and all that, they are only open for the purposes of quarantine or support for essential services. We work together with the sector to ensure that those who are to operate in support of essential services or quarantine do get a letter of permission that when the police visits their premises, they are able to issue. So I want to reiterate and I want to appeal to members of our sector, please don't find yourself in violation with our regulation or our laws. So that is very important. So no one should be receiving guests that are not approved as part of essential services. I think those are the things that I wanted to respond to. Thank you. Oh, sorry, the last one that was asked to Minister Nchabeni, which affects the restaurants and also the issues. The restaurants are supported through the Tourism Relief Fund. If you look at the requirement, it does cover restaurants. But also, those who are part of the SMM issue, we'll talk about the Shisha Nyamas in the townships. They fall under that SMME relief as well. So there is an overlap in terms of that, but we do have a very way of categorizing. There has been a call to say, since proposals of going forward are not going to be sufficient to support this sector that employs a number of people, others have been calling for more relief fund to come, especially for the restaurants. We have listened to that. We will process it in government and also engage with National Treasury. If we do have positive news, we'll come back and address the nation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can we now call on the Minister of Labour and Employment, Nancy, to come here?
I think the first question, Minister Kupayangubane has answered it. Just on the question of any support measures for companies less than 10, there's a package of measures which we are working on as the SMME department together with employment and labor. And once those measures we are ready with, we are going to make the announcements. And I guess in the next meeting we'll be able to do that. Maybe the minister can be able to confirm that. Thank you.
Minister Nchabeni, come and speak on both restaurants that belong to your sector and also the question that the minister said that you are working together on.
Thank you. In terms of the restaurants, we when the announcement has been made in terms of the phased approach of what's happening with restaurants, together with the Minister of Tourism, we are going to announce the support mechanisms to support the restaurants in how they operate, including the Shisa Nyamas in the township and all other people who cook in the township and rural areas. The second issue, Minister Nesi has indicated that we are working on support measures for SMMEs jointly. Is true, because in the SMME relief that was spoken about earlier, we include supporting the payroll on those that are not covered by the UIF. But in that space, that is for those employees that are less than 10. But in that space, we are engaging with the Department of Labor and UIF so that we can then have a common approach of how to access that kitty. But there are also other initiatives that we're finalizing together with the Department of Labor. I think within this week or next week latest, we should be able to announce those schemes that deal with the SMMEs directly, which are supported by both ourselves and the Department of Labor, as part of making sure that as they go back to business, they can then function effectively, but also as the lockdown is impacting them, their chances of survival remains greater. I just needed to confirm that. Thank you.
Thank you, ministers. We will continue. We do have a question online.
The question is coming from Asiri Ndlovu from Capital Live. Go for it, Asiri.
Thank you so much, Karabo. Minister, my name is Asiri Ndlovu from Capital Live, as Karabo said. I have a question. I have two questions, in fact. The first question goes to the Acting Minister of Communications, Mr. Mthembu. I just want to quickly ask, did you perhaps maybe spoke or heard a word from Multi-Choice DSTV for maybe giving their clients a discount, just like what we saw in other African countries, like Kenya, where they get a 75% discount due to this situation? Have you heard anything, or are you talking to them for South African clients? Because I saw a number of people complaining about that. Then number two is the question that goes to the Small Business Development Minister. And if you can remember, I asked you this question before at DECO, that there are small businesses that are complying on certain things and they don't comply on certain things. They normally don't comply on the UIF part because we'll get it's a one-person business or two-people business, like your event companies. Sometimes they hire people temporarily and they don't really register for the UIF. Now, there is this situation, all events are cancelled, internet cafes are closed. These businesses tried to apply on your website, and they were referred to 5 different websites that if they go to each website, most of them, they don't qualify. Like the CICs, these 2 specific kinds of businesses that I mentioned, they don't qualify on those categories that you have there. What do they do in this situation in order to get the relief as well? Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Do we have anything on the WhatsApp channel?
Yes, Mr. There's a question from Lillian Issa from Quenby to the Acting Minister of Communications. Will people over the age of 60 be told to stay home at every level of the alert, given their classification as elderly, or will it simply be recommended? The next question is from Arthur of gadget.co.za to the Minister of Labour. What relief is there for freelance workers who typically earn from job to job, usually don't pay UIF and are not part of the social grant system? They seem to have fallen through the cracks, and many report being rejected by the relief portals. Then there is a question from Nazir from Glow TV. Are attorneys and accountants allowed to go back to work and consult clients on a general basis? Also, has there been any intervention to demand that cell phone providers drastically reduce data prices during the lockdown period? Then there's a question from Andisiwe Makinana of the Sunday Times. How many submissions were received in relation to these level 4 regulations, and does government go through each one of them? How is this done in such a short space of time? The last question is from Vickersberger from Netwerk 24, and it's to any relevant minister. Can you advise on the situation of tenants whose lease contract has expired and arranged to move into a different residence as of the 1st of May? Will they be allowed to do so? Also, regarding regulations of regulations of no tenants being allowed to be evicted, should people who plan to move stay in their current place of residence even when their leases have expired?
I don't know who wants to start, but we better come here. Better come here. Why is she still coming? There's been a question asked whether the telcos, have we engaged with them to reduce their subscription fees for this period? You will know that there are a number of data service providers who have reduced their fees. But we will continue, of course, to engage with them. There are a number who have reduced their fees, which the South Africans are quite aware of. Somebody then referred to multi-choice, that under these circumstances, can the subscription fees be reduced? We have not engaged because we have not been asked to engage multi-choice on behalf of those that are subscribing. But it's a point that we can take through another avenue. Those who are not working, what relief can multi-choice and other companies, that will not only apply to multi-choice, that will apply to any other companies that have got people subscribing to their services. Can we have relief for a few months under this COVID regime, whilst people are trying to find some work, whilst people themselves are trying to get some relief? So that question, from that angle, we are prepared to engage with these service providers, these broadcast service providers and other service providers, so that under these circumstances, can we have a subscriber holiday for those that are in distress? Minister Mamlok.
Okay. As I said earlier on, I think I need to repeat. The briefing relating to level 4 regulations will be done later because the work is not yet done under Minister Dlamini Zuma. So if you noted when the press briefing was done, is that deadline for submission was Monday, 12 o'clock. After that, processing of those applications was being done. So that's where we are. Once that has been done, presented to NCC, NCC processed it, then through Minister Mthembu, a media briefing will be arranged for an outcome of what is the final regulations, including the activities that to take place under level 4. Out of that, if you remember last time how we did that, then each minister will then outline step by step what is to happen within their sectors. We are not yet there. Today we're here as the economic cluster to give an update on what we had publicly committed as part of support for those in distress in terms of businesses and individual as workers. So we are there, and that's the update we are here for. Once we are done with the process from the NCC, Minister Mthembu will call that media briefing and a delegation will come and brief the nation on those. So I thought it's important, including the issue of people who are going to be encouraged to stay at home. Remember, there's been an issue around that those who are vulnerable in society are senior citizens and those who have, immobility. So that as well will be explained as we do level 4 briefing as members of cabinet. I thought that is covering so that at least it's clear that this issue will be coming to the nation. It's still in process. Thank you very much, Mr.
Minister Ngesi.
Thank you, Chairperson. When we're talking about the risk assessment, which must be undertaken by companies to adapt the provisions of the direction or directive we're giving to the specific requirements of the individual places. we are saying they must look also into the issues of occupational health and safety. And employers, they know the profiles. They know the profiles of their employees. Therefore, they must take into consideration all these issues of age and say how they are going to adapt their companies. For instance, one of the issues has been, how do you adapt that some of the workers during this particular period can be able to work from home? So we think that that will be considered. Secondly, on the issue of the freelance workers, unfortunately, with the current legislation, they fall outside. We can't do something illegal. Maybe what we are going to do is, after this, we will have to relook at it in terms of our legislative amendments and start a debate about that. On the small businesses not complying with the UIF, we need those companies to make arrangements with the UIF so that they can register and also acknowledge the debt that they will pay. Some have already started that. They acknowledge their debt, that later on, once they are up and running, they've been able to recover. They are going to pay their debt, so that we give the benefit to the workers, because we should not punish the workers because of sometimes irresponsible employers. That's what we are saying. And if they had been registered as companies, they could be eligible for the government benefit or government relief scheme, provided they've registered as companies. We sit with them, we interact with them, and we're able to help them. Njalo, Velas.
We know that there is another press briefing that will be starting soon. So we need to wrap up. I hope that there are no questions that you have. That there are no questions. Oh, that's good. Oh, you want to answer? Sorry. Minister Njabeni, my apologies. So, hey, our timing is quite good.
Thank you. It's just to add on what Minister Nesi has spoken about. We have agreed with the UIF and the Department of Labor that those SMMEs who had not registered for UIF, or those who had registered their employees for UIF but not honored their payments with UIF, we are going to pass them over to UIF for them to do the acknowledgement of debt, and also to be paid in terms of payroll assistance on our part and TERS on the part of UIF. And we have said on our part, given that the internet cafes are closed, we are requesting that SMMEs who do not have access to printers, photocopiers, and scanners in their homes, they must take photographs using their phones. We will use our network of CEDA in our regions, and also the LED units of municipalities, to make sure that we've got the necessary documentation when they've been considered for application, because it will be just to verify that the documentation is correct. And the other thing, maybe on the not freelancers per se, part of the schemes we are finalizing with the Department of Labor is how do we support what we call artisanal businesses and tradesmen, and that's the scheme that we're going to talk about later. But on our part, we've also finalized the scheme to support bakeries and confectionaries, and we're going to announce the details on how that is done, and also to support the automotive aftermarket sales. We'll announce how that will be done. But with that, I think it's all on our part. Thank you.
To our colleagues, thank you very much for this press briefing. Mkwati, Minister Mamuluku, Minister Nesi, Minister Nchaveni, thank you very much for speaking to our people on what we are doing in relation to what the President announced. But can we, in that vein, appeal to employers. There are very few employers who are applying for this on behalf of their workers and employees for this UIF relief benefit. We are asking them to do so, particularly in the farming sector and in the domestic sector. We are really appealing to all our employers to use this facility because there are vulnerable workers who could benefit from this facility, but they can't because employers are not taking advantage on behalf of their employees of this UIF benefit scheme. But having said that, to Abasemakaya and everybody who has been listening to this broadcast, thank you very much for listening to us. We will continue updating the nation on what steps government is taking to implement what the president has spoken to. We will come back to you on education. We will come back to you on the social cluster, on the issues of increased grants and other related payments of distress to our people. We will definitely come back to you on those issues. But for now, thank you, and thank you very much for listening to us. This meeting is now adjourned. Thank you, bro. I formulate.